Part 6 of the first number of Art in Australia, 1916. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Lure of Sydney by Howard Ashton. In Melbourne there is little natural beauty, and the painters have to seek it. Some of them find it, most of them despair of finding it out of doors and turn to figure painting. That is why the best of figure painters of Australia, with one or two exceptions, come from Melbourne. But there are landscape painters too. Streeton, David Davis and Withers were Melbourne men. These three learnt how to paint solidly, because it is not easy to make pretty pictures in Melbourne. One cannot go out and draw in a graceful distance and fill the foreground with cobalt blue, because there are hardly any graceful distances and no cobalt blue stretches of harbour water there. Around Melbourne there are stretches of rolling downs and a few straggling gum trees, and ploughed fields and old cottages half hidden in garden trees. At the back of some of this landscape, if one is lucky, one may see the grey-blue ridge of the Dandenong Range. That is all that an hour's journey from Melbourne will give the artist, that or a stretch of flat beach and twisted grey-green tea-tree and greenish water on the shores of the bay. Hence the best of the Melbourne men have learnt to draw their foregrounds. But Sydney is a poem itself. It does not need the painter to show its beauty and romance. It does not need so much study to make a picture. The superficial charm is easy to reproduce. Streeton, from his work around Heidelberg, came up to the harbour and blossomed forth in gold and blue, but he had the solid study in Melbourne first, and he set all the young artists painting blue and gold, and many of them found it so easy they gave up the study of values and of drawing and of textures, and gave up truth too. Hilda painted blue and gold in watercolour, and rarely painted a foreground upon which one felt one could walk, but his romantic viewpoint touched what he did obtain with individuality, and so his pictures are valuable. Later on he discovered that all Sydney is not blue and gold, that there are greys and browns and quiet neutral tones as well. He did not paint foregrounds for people to walk on, he painted decorative arrangements, and his art was as true in intention as the material painters who must have reality. And now some of the young Sydney painters have discovered how easy it is to paint arrangements of Sydney, and a Hilda school has arisen. It is necessary to remember that the only person of a school who has a right to very much respect is the one who does not belong to it, but originates it, or at least brings something new and vital into it. Every painter imitates in his youth, and looks back later to his imitations with amusement, not untinged with shame. One finds that honesty and study are the two things without which no decent method of painting has ever been achieved, and that out of a man's own temperament he builds his working theory. A beautiful woman is a trap to foolish young men, and in them she invokes superficial passions based on nothing but externals. Sydney is a trap to young painters in the same way. How few of them have painted honestly the sandstone ramparts behind which she hides. Streeton, in his Fires On, hinted at least that something could be made of them. Some of Hilda's clay pit studies hint, but only hint the same thing. How few of them painted her grey moods, her winter mists, her harbour evenings before the light has gone, her sandhills and ocean beaches and harbour rocks, and dried up patches of yellow-grey grass and twisted scrub. There are thousands of sketches in blue and purple and gold of the harbour in sunlight, and I have noticed in recent paintings of these a tendency to mere prettiness of colour. The dull brown-green of gum trees must be beautified with a little purple or pink. The shadows are too dark and emphatic, they must be toned down to be in harmony. Poetic licence, perhaps, but one has to play scales before one can allow the inspiration of a great sonata full scope and play. One has to paint values before one can play tricks with them, and one has to paint greys before one can get the full effect of the blues and golds which they frame. That is the trouble about Sydney. She inspires one to sonatas and forced tones before one has learnt scales and values. End of Part 6.